Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Just checking to make sure that everyone can see the presentation. Beautiful. I'm getting some responses back that you can. Sensational. So with that, we'll start into today's presentation. As I say, thank you for joining. My name is Ben Mile. I'm the Country Manager for Australia and New Zealand for Grandstream Networks. And today's presentation will be around our Wi-Fi offering. So that will include both Wi-Fi access points, but then also the Wi-Fi endpoints that can be connected into a Wi-Fi network as well. So today I'll change things up a little bit. I usually tell people a bit about Grandstream. I think I've covered that enough in past webinars. So today I'll go through with the Grandstream mission. So our mission is that we believe in connecting the world. We believe every business, large or small, should have the tools to communicate from anywhere on any device. And then, of course, we design products that make this belief become a reality. So we empower businesses to do more by having a very diverse product offering. We cover across, as you can see from this slide, we cover off a very diverse category range of products. The beautiful thing about the Grandstream products is all of them are built around open standards or industry standards. So you can either build a total solution under the Grandstream name, or because they're open standard and industry based, you can take individual particular components and add them to a solution that a customer may already have from another vendor, but allow you to expand out with offerings that may not be available through that vendor. So first of all, we'll touch into networking solutions. Grandstream's been in this product category for probably about 18 months now. It was one of the more recent product categories that we have branched out into. And part of the reason for that was we'd always had Wi-Fi based endpoints. The networking solutions or the access points, they're actually allowing for the total solution to be provided to that customer and ties their whole solution together. So without going, I can go as technical into these as everyone wants, and we can talk about things like MIMO or multi-in, multi-out, and multi-user MIMO. Effectively, what all of that means is it allowing a data stream to be sent to more users at the same time. But I guess if there's one thing that everyone takes out of today with all of our access points, the biggest thing that you need to consider when you're deciding which access point is what's more important, the number of devices that can be connected to the access point or the speed that the data will be transmitted to the devices connected to that access point. Once you can answer that question one way or the other, it becomes very easy to determine which exact access point is best suited to your customer. Because if we can have a higher number of users connected to the access point, then typically that will mean we have a slightly slower throughput speed. If we have less devices connected to it or a capacity to connect less devices, we typically have a faster throughput speed. So we started at our range when we first launched with 3 access points, and I'll run through them reasonably briefly today. So the 7600, we would class that as a mid-tier access point. So as we see here, it'll support up to 450 wireless devices connected to it, and typically has a wireless throughput speed of about 1.27 gig. And on the back end, we have 2 gigabit wireline ports, so actual Ethernet ports connecting it back to the switch. Typically, you'll get up to about 165 meter coverage range, and we have run dual band 2x2 MIMO technology. So basically, that's meaning we can transmit to multiple people at the same time. Where our access points are different, and this is across all of our access points, is we have some embedded security features in them. Obviously, there's the standard encryptions and the like, so WP and WPA2. But where we're a little bit different is with all of our access points in the factory, they have an individual SSID and password burnt into them at the factory. So there is no default username and password. Each device has its own individual. So that allows the device to be secured straight out of the box. We also have embedded controllers in our access points. So that means we can either use the embedded controller to manage the network on site. And we have a couple of other different options of how we can control on site. So we also have a cloud-based controller, which is free. We'll go through that in greater detail. And we also have some software and appliance-based versions that would allow you to manage on site to larger numbers of access points. So this particular access point, the 7600, will allow you to, through the embedded controller, manage up to 30 other access points. So you would have one as the master, one as a backup master, and then every other access point under that would sit as a slave. We then move into the 7610, which, as we can see here, is moving more into the enterprise space. And the reason for that is we're down to a lower number of users. This is what I was mentioning at the start. So we're down to a capacity of about 250 wireless devices, but we've got to jump up in the speed. We're up to about 1.75 gig throughput on the wireless. Similar range, so about 175 meters. We've gone up to 3x3 MIMO technology, so we've got the capacity, as we can see here, to send the data through slightly faster to the end users and more feeds of that to the end users at the same time. Other than that, we've still got the same. We've still got the embedded controller. This particular one can manage up to 50 other access points through the embedded controller, or we can use the other controller options that we mentioned, such as the cloud or software-based. And what I'll do is I'll actually ask people if there are any questions you have, let's hold them to the end, and then I can cover them all off in one go. I'm actually running off one screen today, so it makes it a little bit trickier to be able to manage that at the same time. We then move into the 7600 LR, which is our first foray that we had into an outdoor access point. So this one here, similar specs to the 7600, 450 devices, 1.27 gig throughput, dual band, 2x2 MIMO technology, and the embedded controller of 30 access points. The difference with this one, though, is it had a range of up to about 300 meters based around an omnidirectional panel antenna that's built into the device. So the main thing with this, obviously, was greater range, and then obviously it's in an enclosure that is more suited to an outdoor environment. So that was the biggest difference between this and the 7600. We'll now move into some of the newer ones that we're just launching and are just starting to hit into distributor stock. So this particular one here is different for us. Where you would potentially utilise this would be in accommodation, potentially smaller coffee shops, those type of environments. What it is it's actually an access point with an inbuilt switch. So we can power it either by a power supply or we can power it via PoE. We also then have one PoE out port. So if we look at it from an accommodation point of view, we could have this sitting under the desk in a hotel room. We could have it plugged into a power point. We've then got PoE out that we could power the IP phone in that hotel room. And then we've still got two other LAN ports that we could potentially do IPTV or other network-based services within the room. As I say, it's also a Wi-Fi access point that'll support up to about 80 Wi-Fi devices, and it's got a coverage of about 100 meters. But the difference with this, what we can do in that scenario is we could have it in the hotel room, providing Wi-Fi access within the hotel room, and then by also utilising a mesh technology, we would then be able to connect it via mesh back to access points out in the hallway. So in a retrofit environment, we don't then need to bring Ethernet cabling into each individual room. So this is perfect for a hotel or a motel going through a retrofit. Or where it also fits is we might have high-rise apartment buildings within a city, and scattered throughout that, we may have serviced apartments. So it gives the ability to provide internet access and Wi-Fi access to the serviced apartments, but not having to necessarily go back and re-cable to each one of those individual apartments. The 7630, so this is a step up again within our internal access points. So it'll support up to about 200 concurrent Wi-Fi devices. It runs dual band 4x4 multi-user MIMO. So basically what we're doing is instead of just having the ability to feed out to people in a row, which is typically what a Wi-Fi access point will do, everyone will get a bit of data and then it will cycle around and they get a bit more of their data and cycle around. This particular one here has multi-feeds of that running at the same time. So it allows a much faster throughput to the end device. As you can see here, we're looking up at around about 2.3 gig wireless throughput. Obviously, we've still got gigabit ports on the back end. It'll support up to about 175 meter coverage range. We have the same embedded controller functionality in there, so we can support up to 50 other access points as an inbuilt embedded controller for that network. And one other point that we've got on here, which is also true across all our other access points, is we have a secure boot functionality in there where the firmware is actually checked for digital signatures. And if those signatures fail, the access point will not power up. So for that purpose, we don't allow people to customize firmware for the access points. It is locked down to a secure firmware that runs through the access points. Now, one thing I should mention here is the 7602, the one that we just previously looked at. That is the only access point we make that does not have an embedded controller within it. It is designed to be controlled either by an on-site software or hardware-based controller or managed through the cloud. That is the only one limitation that particular device has. Then we move on to the 7630LR, which is our newest outdoor access point. So this particular one here is, as you can probably gather, it's basically a mirror copy of the 7630. This particular one has removable or detachable antennas. So they're a standard screw-on antenna, which means that people can then change them. We will ship standard with omnidirectional antennas, but it then means that the antennas can be changed for directional, or it allows people to change the dB gain based around the antennas that they connect to it. And this one, like our other one in its standard guise, will support coverage up to around about 300 meters. And it's also IP66 weatherproof rated when it is installed vertically. Obviously, if you install it horizontally, then that potentially affects the weatherproof capability, because typically it's designed to be installed vertically. And that would either be on a wall or on a pole. We then move into GWN Cloud, which is our free cloud controller. So this allows people to manage their networks from anywhere that they have access to the web. It can be accessed through a browser, or there is also apps that can be downloaded for both iOS and Android. It works with all the Grandstream access points. You can see real-time AP and client monitoring. And obviously you can pull out statistics, reports. You can get email alerts for if there's issues with a particular access point. But where this one starts to become powerful is as an integrator or a managed service provider, you could have one overarching account and all of your customers sitting as sub-account networks under there and be able to manage them all through a single interface. There is no theoretical upper limit of how many access points you can have connected to one overarching account. So there is no limitations from that perspective either. As I said, it is actually free. It's not in beta anymore, so anyone that wants to sign up for it that does not have an account, it's simply a matter of going to www.gwn.cloud/register. You'll be able to set up an account. If you then download the app for your mobile phone, to provision an access point, it is as simple as taking a photo of the barcodes on the back of the access point through the app, and that will provision them straight up to the cloud, and then you can provision straight away. So you'll be able to provision an access point within less than a couple of minutes straight up through the cloud and have that access point up and running. We then have this one here. We are just releasing at the moment into beta. It is GWN Manager. So it is essentially the same as GWN Cloud, but it is a software-based client. So it is software that people can download. They can put it onto their own server that meets obviously the server requirements, and it will support up to 3,000 access points that they're able to manage through that. Other than that, same functionality that we have in GWN Cloud. So this is more designed for people that either A, want to keep the management within their own organisation, or B, for depending on what industry they're in, they may have data sovereignty legislation that does not allow their management software to sit on a public cloud. So this will allow people to manage it themselves internally. So that gives a very rough, quick overview of our Wi-Fi networking products. The one other point that I will point out about them is all of our access points have the ability to be either an access point or to be a wireless bridge or to be part of a Wi-Fi mesh network. So when you're configuring the access point, you will determine which one you want them to be. And obviously when we get to the end, I'll take any questions that people have around them. But now what we'll do is we'll touch on to some of the other devices that can be used as endpoints on a Wi-Fi network that you may build for your customer or that they may already have to extend the reach of that Wi-Fi network and obviously be able to gain the most functionality out of the Wi-Fi network that they may have deployed. So we have our range of carrier-grade phones, our GRP 2600 series. These are our newest ones. We have, in this range, we have every single model bar one has inbuilt Wi-Fi in them. So we'll go through these reasonably quickly because at the end of the day, they're phones. We can run a separate webinar on the phones. But we start off with the 2612. So we have three models here. The one that we're looking at in particular today is the 2612W. The W notates that it has inbuilt Wi-Fi. So it's a color LCD screen, 2 SIP accounts, 4 multi-purpose lines. And as we see, we can have the ability to run either Wi-Fi or Ethernet cabling. We move on to the 2614. So we're moving into, this is a dual LCD screen. So we've got a 2.8 inch for the main screen and 2.4 for the secondary screen. And we still have the inbuilt Wi-Fi. This one will manage up to 4 SIP accounts. And we have 40 virtual programmable multi-purpose keys, which we can scroll through down the bottom on that secondary LCD screen. 2615, we're moving into a larger screen, so either for reception or power users. It has the inbuilt Wi-Fi, it's a 4.3 inch screen. We have 5 SIP accounts and 10 multi-purpose keys. And then we also have 40 multi-purpose keys that we can run through them. This particular one will also run an expansion module or a sidecar. So we can have that sitting there for people that need to monitor greater numbers of users. The 2616 is basically the bigger brother to the 2614. So we're running dual LCD screens. We've got 48 multi-purpose keys on it. We have the inbuilt Wi-Fi. So this is where we would get right up to the higher end of users. Moving across into a different stream, we have people that may want to be utilising specific Android apps that they've had built for their work environments. They may want to be able to start to do some basic video conferencing and that sort of functionality. We've got a range of phones in here too that also fit within the Wi-Fi access points or the Wi-Fi endpoints that we're talking. So we move into the 3350, which is the latest one that we've released in our Android range of phones. So we have a 5-inch touchscreen. We also have a physical keypad for people that just want to be able to make a quick phone call. It supports inbuilt dual band Wi-Fi. And we also have an inbuilt 1 megapixel camera with a privacy shutter that we can start to use for either video conferencing, or we can utilise with door video intercoms to be able to get video feeds through to them prior to letting someone into a facility. The 3370, this one's been out for a little while now, probably a little bit over 6 months. It's a 7-inch full touchscreen, supports dual band Wi-Fi, runs on Android 7, as does the 3350. So the ability to be able to download Android apps from the Google Play Store and or to be able to have apps written for them through an SDK kit. Also supports dual band Wi-Fi, so we're still tying back into the Wi-Fi networks that we've just been discussing. And then we go to the range top of the 3380, which is an 8-inch full touchscreen Android device. This particular one, as the others, supports dual band Wi-Fi. It'll support 3-way 1080p video conferencing. We've got a 2 megapixel camera in this one, again with the privacy shutter. So what we're seeing is all the Android phones have a little wheel on the back that you allow you to turn the camera around so that you have privacy and there is no concerns around that particular camera if it's based on someone's desk. So again, we've got another Wi-Fi endpoint that we can provision across that Wi-Fi network that we've just built, or if we have the cabling available, we can connect it via the gigabit port on the back directly into a switch. Now we move into the interesting ones. People typically for mobile communications would use DECT. Where we're starting to head now is more into Wi-Fi, so Wi-Fi cordless phones. And we've got one model currently with another two due for short-term release. So the current model that we have is the WP820. Supports dual-band Wi-Fi and obviously roaming support between access points. Supports HD voice. It's got dual microphones for voice and noise cancellation. Runs 2 SIP accounts and 2 lines. But the beauty of this is it runs over a Wi-Fi network compared to DECT. So over the Wi-Fi network, the only limitation we have is how far we've covered our campus with Wi-Fi. And it is much easier to extend a Wi-Fi network in a campus than it is to with DECT. If we're in DECT, we need to use things like multi-cell DECT and quite a lot of network planning. One that will be coming out in the very near short term is the WP810. So this is the next step down. So it will sit below the WP820. It'll still have 2 SIP accounts and 2 lines. It will be a smaller form factor handpiece. So anyone that's familiar with our DECT phones, the WP820 shares the same chassis with our DP730, and the WP810 shares the chassis with our DP722. So there's a slight difference in the handset size. Other than that, we've still got 2 SIP accounts, 2 lines. This one, when it's released, is going to come down a lot closer to what someone will be looking at to roll out a DECT solution, especially by the time they take into account the DECT handset and the DECT base station. This particular one, all you're doing is buying the handset and connecting to an existing Wi-Fi network. This one here, which is already getting a lot of interest, this one will be out, I would say, probably closer to mid-year, the WP850. This is moving into a mobile computing device. So it'll support 6 SIP accounts and 6 lines, 5.7-inch full HD touchscreen. It'll support NFC and fingerprint recognition. It's got 1D and 2D barcode scanners built into it. It's IP67 dustproof and weatherproof. It's got a drop-safe rating of about 1.2 meters. It'll run Android 9 and obviously support Google Play Store. It will support dual-band Wi-Fi and integrated Bluetooth. It has an integrated rechargeable 4800 milliamp battery with, at this stage, around about 12 hours talk time. And it will also support 4G and LTE support. So this is where you'll be able to start to merge devices such as barcode scanners and your communication device into one. So verticals for this would be things like hospitality, healthcare, aged care, logistics, and the list goes on. But already starting to get a lot of interest within the marketplace. We then move across into a different category. So we've put the Wi-Fi network in, we've potentially hung some phones off it, either because we don't have cabling or we don't have huge numbers of phones that we need to provision and we're not putting in cabling. We can now start to move into an intercom and speaker space. And we have 2 models in here, and the beauty with these is, again, they support Wi-Fi. So we can, if a customer's got a Wi-Fi network and they are just wanting to add in some speakers or an intercom, they have the ability to do that utilising their Wi-Fi network as well for points that they may not be able to get cabling to. So we have a 3505, which is a one-way. So, sorry, I apologise for the typo in that top line. It is actually a one-way speaker, so it's designed purely for pushing out audio. It has inbuilt Wi-Fi, so we have the ability to connect it to a Wi-Fi network, or we also have the network port on the back, which will allow us to power it via either PoE or PoE+. So if we're using it as a Wi-Fi device, all we need is a power point and a PoE injector, and then we can connect it straight to a Wi-Fi network. And then we have the ability to push out announcements over a particular environment. The 3510 is its bigger brother. So this one here supports full duplex 2-way communication. It has 3 directional mics built into it, and with a microphone beamforming array to support noise cancellation and echo cancellation. It has inbuilt dual band Wi-Fi. So again, we can connect it to a Wi-Fi network. We have Bluetooth in there, so we can have it discoverable as a Bluetooth speaker. So we could potentially have it sitting in a classroom as a speaker for announcements over the PA, but we can also have it as discoverable for Bluetooth, so that when the teacher is perhaps presenting from their laptop, they can connect via Bluetooth to it and have the audio come out through the Bluetooth speaker versus everyone trying to hear from just the laptop speaker. We have then obviously the network port on there, so we can power it via PoE or PoE+. We also have a 2-pin output on, a 2-pin input on it. So what that means is we can put a dry contact button on the wall as, say, an emergency contact button. As soon as someone hits that button, we can have it configured so that it will predetermine and make calls to programmed either extensions or programmed phone numbers and automatically open the two-way communication. Where this is also gaining interest is within the aged care and healthcare sectors, because what it means is you can have these, for example, in an aged care facility, you can have these in the resident rooms or their bedrooms or bathroom. As soon as they hit the nurse call button, what we can do is we can have it set so that it will either open a two-way communication, or it has the ability for the nurse or the care provider from, say, a WP820 cordless Wi-Fi phone that they may be roaming across the facility with. They have the ability to ring directly to the speakers in the resident room and have that automatically open a two-way communication with the resident. So even if the resident's fallen on the floor and they can't reach the phone, they can have this auto answer and be able to communicate directly with the care provider. Or the care provider can actually speak to the people to be able to prioritise the calls on the move as to which one's more important and which one they need to get to first. One other new product that's coming out is a door intercom screen, so an internal screen to complement our door intercoms. So as you've guessed it, it has inbuilt Wi-Fi, hence why it's included in this presentation today. It's a 7-inch touchscreen. It has built-in PoE to power the device. It has 2 network ports on it, but it also supports dual-band Wi-Fi. It has 4 alarm input ports and 1 alarm output. So obviously we can start to integrate with door intercoms, but we can also have it start to do some activities that we may want it to do depending on it being triggered because of the outputs. It will support full duplex 2-way audio as a speakerphone. It also has the echo cancellation in there. It'll support up to 4 SIP accounts, and this particular one is a Linux-based device. So what you could do is have one of our GDS door intercoms sitting at the front door and have the video feed come to this particular device and then be able to answer the call and release. You may have some SIP cameras, which we'll be updating our range on those later in the year. You may have some SIP video cameras. You'll be able to monitor those cameras through this device. There is a number of functions that you can see, as you can see from the buttons on there. We can make a call, we can monitor cameras, we can see the call history, we can message, all these sorts of things. We can have it set so that you can see the weather and all that sort of data that can be sent through to it as well. So now we'll go a little bit into, because of the cordless that we've been discussing, what is the difference between Wi-Fi voice and DECT voice? So this is what I get asked a lot. So if we look at DECT first over on the right-hand side, it's tried and true. It's been relied on for wireless voice for more than 20 years. It is specifically designed for voice, and as such, it operates on its own frequency band. However, that own frequency band does have some limitations around it, namely the sort of distance that you can get. As we're seeing here, typically the range is up to about 50 metres indoors and up to about 300 metres outdoors. And because it's in its own frequency, scaling can be expensive and complicated. You can use things like repeaters, but that reduces the number of concurrent calls you can have running through that repeater. You can use multi-cell DECT, however, that's quite an expensive technology. It is quite complicated to roll out, and it is still a separate network that you're having to maintain just for the voice. If we step across to the left-hand side of the screen now to Wi-Fi voice, it has a longer range because typically we're only limited by the range that's being provided by the Wi-Fi access point. We looked at access points previously. We're talking ranges of up to 170 and up to 300 metres. So within doors, we might be getting a range of up to 150 metres from one AP. So we're 3 times the distance that we're getting out of a DECT base station. It's easier installation because typically an environment will either have a Wi-Fi network or they'll be deploying one. So it is a matter of just pairing that Wi-Fi cordless phone to the Wi-Fi network and off you go. And you'll be able to roam from access point to access point. Obviously, there's some settings you set up on the network, and on our website we have a guide by vendor. So if you're not using the Grandstream APs, although I would suggest that, but if you're not, we have a guide of how to get the best experience out of the roaming side of your Wi-Fi network. One little point to mention here: if you use the Grandstream APs, they have a functionality in them called Enterprise Voice. If you tick that box, it actually provides a much faster and more seamless handover from access point to access point, and has less packet drop and less susceptibility to people having a pause or hearing a crack or a pop as they move. A Wi-Fi voice is easy to scale. It's just a matter of either adding phones or adding additional APs. So the trouble with, or one of the limitations of Wi-Fi, it can suffer from interference from wireless technologies and network traffic. So you need to take a little bit of that into account when you design the Wi-Fi network. But if the network's designed correctly, it will provide a perfectly usable and typically a far superior experience to voice, because you'll be able to have a larger number of HD quality or high quality voice calls running across that network compared to, say, a DECT network. Typically within Wi-Fi voice, the handset costs have been more expensive. However, once we release the upcoming WP810, I think even that scenario is going to change, because when I was looking at some figures, we're really getting right down towards the DECT pricing model for the handsets by the time you take into account the DECT handset and the DECT base station. With the Wi-Fi cordless, all you need is the Wi-Fi cordless. The Wi-Fi network's already there, always going to be there, and can be utilised. And of course, the biggest thing with Wi-Fi voice, you're not having separate networks to maintain. You're able to have one network that is maintained and one network that is able to support the entire environment. So we'll move into a couple of quick typical deployments here. So in hospitality deployment, we've got our UCMs, which is our ranges of PBXs, can easily handle the complex communication network. That's obviously using a Grandstream IP PBX. You can obviously use anything else on the back end to run the solution. But one thing that is noticeable is there is different communication requirements per staff member. And typically there'll be Wi-Fi provided for in the rooms, event halls, and common outdoor areas. So the UCM, I'll talk that because we're talking Grandstream today. So our PBX lays the powerful foundation. Many departments that need intuitive communication. So we have a vast solution within the Grandstream range to be able to provide that. We have things like the desk-based phones, which we can either connect via Wi-Fi or we can connect them via cabling. We have Wi-Fi cordless solutions for staff that need to be able to roam the facilities, such as maybe housekeeping or management positions. We have speakerphones, so for environments where there may be a meeting room or there may be a boardroom that is hired out, we have speakerphones within that space that also support either Ethernet cabling or Wi-Fi. Within the UCM, we have the ability to be able to set up call routes and map needs to be intuitive so that we can route it to the specific departments and the likes. We can also have PMS integration to management, the staff and guests, to maximise the staff and management guest experience. So a hotel will run a PMS or a property management system, and we have integrations with a number of those. If there's ones that specific customers use and that we don't, we can obviously look into creating the API interface for those as well. So that is about them being able to manage their property and know exactly, for simple things such as staff can go to a room, they can key a code into a PMS system through their phone, and that will then alert reception that that room has been cleaned and is now ready to be given to the next guest that's arriving. So some of the communication needs, obviously the reservations desk is the biggest driver in revenue and call volume, so that needs to be taken into account. The front desk controls the guest experience, and obviously they need to be able to respond rapidly to the guest. If the guest is ringing from the room, they want the front desk to be answering to be able to work through their query. So that's where we may utilise a mixture of both desk phones and also cordless phones. Housekeeping, they obviously require mobility across the organisation. Typically, we've seen in that environment, people will either be using walkie-talkies or they may be using DECT. As we've just seen, we have the ability with the Wi-Fi cordless phones to be able to replace that functionality. One thing I didn't mention about the Wi-Fi cordless phones is they all have a function in them called push to talk, which is a bit like a one-way radio. So it allows me to push that button and to be able to send a voice communication out to everyone else that's sharing that same network. So a bit like a broadcast, a bit like a one-way push out. And then once I have released my button, people on the other end are able to reply. So we're replacing the walkie-talkie type setup, but also having the ability for them to be able to walk around with a fully functional phone within that. And then obviously hotel guests require room-based communication, be it either just to contact housekeeping, be it to contact reception, be it to ring room service because they want a hamburger because they're hungry. We have the ability there that we can either use cable, so we can connect via an Ethernet cable if there is the cabling functionality to the room, or if it's in a retrofit environment, we have the ability to put a Wi-Fi based desk phone in the room and be able to provide that functionality without the need to recable. And as we mentioned, that new little access point, the GWN 7602, also allows us to bring in the Wi-Fi network to rooms that may not have cabling and it may be harder to get the Wi-Fi cabling to. So we can provision that. Typically, for example, if we have a hotel that's being refurbished that is built out of brick or concrete, it becomes harder to provision access points that will provide full coverage within those rooms. Or as we discussed, the service departments scattered across the building. And then obviously Wi-Fi networks. So they're wanting to provide public Wi-Fi networks for guests. They're wanting to be able to do things like captive portable splash pages so that the connection is secured. So it is only guests that are accessing their Wi-Fi network and not just for the general public that is standing outside the hotel. They may want to create separate Wi-Fi networks for staff and guests. So our access points will support up to 16 different SSIDs, effectively enabling you to create multiple networks for staff, guests, facility management and the likes, but being able to use the same access points. So we're not having to multiply and double up on access points. And then obviously for outdoor around pool areas or for event halls, we can utilise the GWN 76LR or the newer one, the GWN 7630, which will provide greater coverage over a larger area and obviously also be weatherproof. So they're not going to deteriorate sitting out in that type of environment. So this gives a very rough schematic overview. So obviously we've got the SIP service coming into the UCM in this case. We're then running a PoE switch, which will go out to the access points. If we have the ability, if we don't, we can create a mesh network where we can have access points hopping to access point to be able to provide Wi-Fi in a place where we can't get cabling. However, just bear in mind there are limitations around that. Each hop you do will halve the bandwidth that you will have available through that access point. So for that reason, we would recommend no more than 4 hops in a Wi-Fi mesh network. And then as we see down the bottom, some of the phones we might use video phones for the director and the security and the general manager. Front desk, we may utilise a 1700 series or a 2100 series because they're designed for higher volume calls versus some of our cheaper phones down in the 1600 series. The hotel staff and housekeeping, we might provide them with a Wi-Fi cordless phone. Conference rooms and boardrooms, we might provide a speaker phone in there, which we can do either through cable or Wi-Fi. For staff that need to be contacted urgently, we have an app that you can download that will interface with the UCM called GS Wave, and that allows them to be reachable on their internal extension on their mobile device. And then at the entrance, we might put a GDS door intercom, which allows us to be able to let guests in after hours via video. Or what we can do is even as someone swipes their RFID card to come in, we can actually take a photo image of the field of vision at that point, capturing exactly who was entered into that environment as that card's been swiped. Where something like that may be interesting, apart from a hotel, might be for, say, an Airbnb property. You can you can give someone an RFID card in conjunction with a door intercom, so that whilst they're holidaying, they can use the RFID card to unlock the door that has electronic door locks on the front door. You can then provide the time frame that they've booked the room for, access through that card. but as they swipe the card to come in each time, you can ensure that they're not bringing in 20 or 30 other people for a party. And then if we move into an aged care deployment, so again, the UCM we can utilise to manage communication network and how we're routing the calls. Again, we've got different communication requirements per staff member. PCAs or the nurses, they're managing what could be urgent issues with residents. The facility manager, they may be dealing more with the resident's family or with outside callers, so they have a different communication need. And then obviously communication between staff and residents, that is critical, that is the main thing they need to focus on. So again, the UCM puts the foundation in there. We're requiring reliable communications tools. So we need to be able to connect in the way that is suited for that facility. So again, we have some Wi-Fi solutions for where we can't get cabling, but we can still provide the communication at that point. If we have got data cabling, then we've got devices we can connect directly into the cabling. We can provide simple solutions for residents. We can provide nice, simple, basic phones for them to be able to put in their rooms so that they can be able to ring their family and the likes. And we can provide facility-wide communication, either under the Grandstream name, or we can actually have Grandstream devices in addition or extending a network or extending a communication backbone that they may already have within that facility. So the resident need is the biggest driver of the calls because obviously people are in there to be looked after. Staff need mobile communication tools. Typically in an aged care environment, we've seen people relying on DECT or again, maybe walkie-talkies between individual staff. Utilising Wi-Fi cordless phones, we can solve both of those with one need. They need the ability to prioritise calls on the move. So a staff member or a care provider can do that with a Wi-Fi cordless phone. And if we've deployed the SIP speakers in the resident environments, they're able to contact the resident before they get there and be able to prioritise which calls are actually more important on the move. Residents require simple communication tools. So again, nice, plain, simple, easy, dumbed down phones that they don't have to be scared of. The resident may not always be able to reach the phone. So this is where we've mentioned before, there may also be another usage case for the SIP-based intercoms. So we may put them in the rooms, we may put a button on the wall so that they're able to do that. Because there's the dry contact, what we could potentially look at doing is integrating with a nurse call system where the resident has the pendant around their neck. They can push that and potentially we can drive the speakers to actually answer and them to be able to have that two-way communication with the care provider without even needing to have interaction with that phone. So again, we've got Wi-Fi networks for staff. Obviously, they need to be able to roam across the environment, either for voice communication or for data. Their care plans and their progress notes, a lot of those are computer-based now. So being able to have the ability on it to utilise a tablet over a Wi-Fi network increases staff efficiency. We have Wi-Fi cordless phones for mobile communication across the facility. We've got the SIP speakers for hands-free communication with the residents, but also if we need to push out facility-wide announcements, we have the ability to be able to do that. We have the UCM, which can manage all of that call flow and route where the calls need to go. The beautiful thing about the UCMs, for people that don't know, or our PBXs, is we don't charge a licensing model. Once you buy that PBX, you have full access to the full number of users and the full functionality day one. And then obviously we can provide desk phones for the nurse station, etc. Be that either a cabled phone, so we're plugging into an Ethernet port, or if we've got an environment where we don't have cabling, we can connect it to that Wi-Fi network that we've got running across the facility. So this is, again, is a typical schematic, and we've got a similar type usage that we could have here. So for executives such as the facility manager and power users, we might put a video phone there because they may want to have interface with a door intercom, or a lot of facilities are part of change. They may want to have video calls between the sites rather than just an audio call. So we have the ability to do that through those Android-based phones. For the staff and the nurse stations, we would typically put a desk-based phone. For managers and the care providers, we provide them with a Wi-Fi cordless phone because we have the greater roaming ability and we're not having the complexity of putting in multi-cell DECT. Conference rooms, I've put that there because some of them still have, not so much a conference room, but they may have a private dining room and things like that where people are celebrating. They may want to bring in people that are unable to be in that facility, or even in a manager's office, they may have a number of people that need to sit around as part of a conference call. We have the conference phones. And as I say, because they're Wi-Fi based, they can be moved from room to room within that facility as they're needed and just connect back to the Wi-Fi network. And then for the facility manager, we have the ability to put on the GS Wave app so that even when they're off-site, they're contactable by the staff on-site through a standard extension number versus having to remember or having to dial the facility manager's mobile number. So we're tying all of this solution in for them and making a much simplified and also at the same time a robust communication network for them. So a little bit about Alloy. I've been asked to mention this. So Alloy have an open relationship with their partners and obviously work closely to remove any obstacles or delays. They don't want to get bogged down in the procedures and red tape. They would rather actually be proactive in responding to your needs as you need them, and obviously meeting market demands and obviously bringing in products that are going to help you to provide the solutions that your customers are after. And they always look for a two-way commitment to work together with their resellers, obviously to achieve the best outcomes. Their primary focus is to provide quality support and service. So I guess giving a little bit about down here, they've been with Grandstream for about 5 years now as a distributor. They stock locally and they also have the expertise in-house. They have the ability to discuss demo and loan units with you. They have a fully qualified sales and technical support team. Their team is obviously locally based. They try to make it as easy as possible to do business with them. And obviously being a direct distributor, they have a very close relationship with Grandstream. What are you going to get from Alloy? You're going to get product training and know-how. You'll get pre- and post-sales support. You'll get demonstrations and proof of concept assistance. So if you're designing a complex solution for a customer, talk to them about it and how they can help. They'll give you quick access to any collateral or marketing materials to help with any products that you may be proposing to customers and needing to put into tender responses or RFP bids. And obviously you'll get a dedicated account manager. They'll provide free tech support. They have full local RMA and warranty capabilities. They have options that you can take out for various service level requirements that you can discuss with them depending on what your customers' requirements are. Remote and on-site configuration services can also be offered. So if you're needing that, discuss it with them and they'll work out with you how they can assist and whether there is any potential cost implications of that. And then obviously they have their full test lab where they can actually set up the solution that you're trying and make sure that it will actually work. So next steps. Yeah, obviously grandstream.com, you can get full product data sheets. If you're needing to get in contact with Alloy, there's obviously a phone number or their website if that's wanting to talk with them about demo or loan gear or NFR gear. If you need any product advice, involve them in that process. They're trained to do that. If you're needing training and product overviews, again, talk to your Alloy account executive around that. They're geared to do that and they'll be able to arrange that for you. They'll obviously be able to provide you with up-to-date pricing and availability. There is online YouTube and case study links. There is also, for anyone that hasn't signed up, there's also Grandstream Partner Connect. So if people sign up with that, what it's doing is it's giving you access into the Grandstream backend as well. So it gives you things such as data sheets. It gives you high quality product images. It gives you sell sheets, comparison charts, battle cards against competition, all these sorts of things so that you're equipped and have the data that you need at hand to be able to put images in presentations that you're presenting to your customers, to be able to know how a particular product stacks up against the competitor that your customer might be looking at. All this sort of information is available and at hand. So I've covered a lot. There must be some questions, I am sure. So we've got some here. Where are we? Where are we? All right, so let's start with these. Where is the user parts name printed? And assume a factory reset resets it. So it's talking about the access points. Yes, it does. So the user and username and password, they're printed on the actual barcodes on the individual product. So they are printed in there. If you do a factory reset, it will reset them to that particular username and password. It is specific to that central device. So that is how that part works. So even if someone does a factory reset, they're going to get pushed back to the specific username and password. Do you offer an AP central management device or software? Yes, we do, GWN Cloud or GWN Manager. Are the AP devices all PoE powered? Yes, they are. So powered straight through PoE. What happens if the sticker gets damaged and user password can't be viewed? That is a very interesting one. That is one that you would need to come back through the support process because, as I say, it is specific and individual to each one. So it's very, very locked down and very specific to that particular end device. What was the limitation with the GWN 7630 again? 7630, what you're looking at for that particular device is you're wanting to be able to push data out faster, but to a smaller number of users. So you're looking at around a couple of hundred end users, but you're wanting to be able to get the data out to them as fast as you possibly can. So that is what you would use for there. Do any of the phones work with MS Teams? Okay. Get asked this question all the time. The only way that I can give you an MS Teams device today would be as not necessarily an officially supported device. You'd be using one of the Android-based phones, and then you'd be installing the Teams app on that. Will an active call drop out when roaming between APs? If they're set up correctly, no, they won't. It will hand across from AP to AP, and you'll be able to roam seamlessly, much like you would with your laptop. You can just go from access point to access point. Where are we? Next one. Can two GSC 3510 be activated simultaneously? Suppose they are located in two different rooms, and in case of alarm, we want the tenant to start an alarm through the dry contact. Yes, you can have two activated simultaneously, and what you will actually have from that perspective is, let's say it is activated, or even if you call to, say you've got two within a residence, independent living unit in an aged care environment, if you have them both linked to a call group, if you call to them, when they answer, if someone's speaking through one of those speakers, the only person that will hear what's being said from that end through that speaker will be where the calls originated from. It will not be necessarily broadcast to everyone else. You have the functionality to turn that feature on off because sometimes you want privacy around what's coming back from the other end. What's meshing capability like? Do all APs support it? Yes, meshing, they are supported by all of them. The limitation is obviously the more hops you do, the less bandwidth you have. And so obviously the slower the data speed is going to be that you will get on any device connected to the mesh access point. Hence why no more than 4 hops per mesh network. Any issues to consider when roaming between APs? Does it support all standards? Yes, they support all standards. I mentioned quickly before the enterprise voice. That meshes a number of roaming standards together, and using that, you may experience roaming from one access point to another access point. You may experience packet loss down as low as 1 to 4 packets. So the human ear would not perceive it. The human eye would not perceive it if you were watching it streaming video as you roam from one to the other. What's the USB port for on the APs? That has been put there. The original concept around that was for IoT. There's a number of different competing standards at the moment for IoT. The thought was once a standard is ratified, then potentially there is just a USB dongle that goes on to enable IoT with the winning standard. Are the 2 gigabit wireline ports on the GWN 7630LR switched, i.e. can be looped through to the next 7630LR? Typically, no. The idea is they are actually acting as the APs are acting as an AP. They're not acting as part of a loop or a hop network in that scenario. What are your AP strengths in comparison to Unify or Ubiquity? Okay, so basically we have individual username and password from the factory. We typically run a higher powered chipset, so typically have a greater coverage range per access point, so fewer access points. Cloud controller is free, so and with no upper limit, so you can manage them individually. You can manage them through the one separate account or the one account. And I can keep going, but they're probably the main ones. Oh, and obviously price point, we're much more attractive within the price point as well. Can we customize the GSC 3570 user functions shown on the device? That particular product is still being finalized. Yes, I believe there will be functionality around that, and we'll have more on that as we get due to the launch of the product. Is there docs on the captive portal features somewhere? Typically, there is on the GWN cloud, there is actually a user guide for that, and that will explain in there. Typically what it allows you to do though is set up a captive portal. You can set up various authentication methods, be it password, be it open, be it via Facebook, be it via WeChat, all these sorts of things. The beauty of using the cloud controller is it is all drag and drop. You don't need to know any coding language. You literally set it up how you want through the drag and drop. You put in the credentials that you need to. You can then preview what it will look like on both a laptop and a mobile device before you provision it out to the access points. What's the range of the GSC 3510? How far could the source of the voice or the person from the far end be from the speakers? They're designed for about a 4.5 metre range pickup. So in a typical room type environment, they're perfect. Go larger than that, you might put a couple in, and then obviously with the echo cancellation, and as we discussed the multicast, we have the ability to be able to cancel one out from the other as the feeds are coming through. So how did we go with all those answers? I think we've covered them all off. Any other questions that people had? Grandstream routers. Okay, Grandstream routers, any update? All right. At this stage, the Grandstream router is mainly being seen internally within Grandstream as a on-site controller for APs. There's not a whole lot of development at this point being done around the routing functionality for them. We're actually reviewing the router category at the moment and whether we expand that out and the like. So that will be a little bit more of a watch this space at this stage. So the current version of firmware that they're running, that is probably the version of firmware they will stay on at this point for the foreseeable future until further decisions are made around that category as a whole. Does the GSC 3510 have Bluetooth connectivity? Yes, it does. You have the ability to either put it as discoverable or not. If you put it as discoverable, obviously you would set a password to it so that if it was in a classroom environment, you didn't necessarily have all the kids connecting to it and trying to push out their Spotify music to it across the classroom. Now we've also got, can the Grandstream entrance video phones work with 3CX to do video calls when the entrance button is pushed or video calls between users? Or does Grandstream have its own video interrupter operation between their devices? They can be utilised for either. If you use them with 3CX, you would need to use templates for them, or you can also do in the Grandstream ecosystem. Yes, you can do that. In the Grandstream ecosystem, you can actually send the video preview from the door intercom even through to, say, one of the WP820 cordless phones. For well-made internal access points, what is the recommended access point to use? Would it be better to use the vertically mounted outdoor unit or the indoor units mounted vertically work well? You would utilize, if it's indoors, you would still utilize the indoor access points. If it's outdoors, then obviously you would use the outdoor access points. The indoor access points will work perfectly fine, be it whether they are on a ceiling or whether they're wall mounted. Are there any automation functions through the Grandstream tables to open doors, windows, make calls, turn off or on or off other devices for disabled users? What you would typically do with that, you would typically do that in maybe, if we're talking from a phone perspective, you would typically do that with a Okay, so it's through the Grandstream tablets. Sorry, we just had that corrected. With that, not typically within the Android ones at this point. We do offer an SDK kit, so it would be able to have someone develop that for a specific requirement. When we move to the GSC, the 3570, which is the intercom screen, that will have the functionality to do that as part of that. And is there a specific webinar or training to learn how to program the GSC 3510 with the UCM? Yes, we can do that. We can do that. What I would suggest from people with that, if they are interested in that, let their Alloy account manager know, and then we can obviously schedule a time for that. And we can get that scheduled for everyone. Okay, did I say the tablet ran Android or Linux? The wall screen or the internal door screen for the intercom, the initial version will run Linux. There is a plan down the track that there will be another model at this stage released that will most probably become a 10-inch screen or anything up to a 10-inch screen, and that will be Android-based, but that will be a second model that will come out further down the track. Any other questions from anybody? I think we've covered off everything to this point. When will the GWN 7630LR be available? Okay, as a product, we have released that. It is now just a matter of, obviously, with what's going on in China, when distributors are able to get shipments across from China. So part of that is held up in that at this point. When are new cameras coming? Yes, we do have a couple of new cameras that will be coming. They will be out in the next few months. We will be standardising on 2 models, and obviously we'll talk about them more as we get closer to launch on those. But there is some development happening in that camera space. The portable tablet Android, we don't actually have a portable tablet. So we have obviously a wall mount tablet, which is the GSC 3570, and then we have the tablet Android phones. So the wall mount one will either be wall mount, or there will be an option to buy a desk mount bracket for that. But it's not actually designed so much as a portable device because it doesn't have power within it. It has no battery. It's designed to be powered either by a power supply or by PoE. Any further questions, or have we covered them all off for now? No, it looks like we've covered them all off. So once again, I'll thank everyone for attending. And hang on, we've got one more. Can Grandstream devices interact with video intercom, etc., through an Android tablet? There's 2 ways you could do it. You can obviously the video intercom, we can interface directly into the Grandstream Android phones and the Android and those devices. If you're wanting to utilize a normal stock standard Android tablet, you would be able to put GS Wave on there, and then you would be able to run the video feed through that. So there is the ability to be able to do both. So I think what we'll do is we'll wind today's webinar up now. I'll thank everyone for their time, and hopefully you've all been able to gain some valuable information from it. Any questions or anything that you would like to see in future ones, by all means, let your Alloy's account manager know, and then we can build presentations around that for you. And obviously there'll be further webinars coming as we have more new products that are launching out to the market, so that we can start to get you across all the new offerings that are coming out into the market, and obviously the ways that they can all tie together, either through a total Grandstream solution or be as a bolt-on and an add-on to a solution that your customer may already have. So once again, I'll thank everyone for your time, and hope you all enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Oh, actually, I've got one more question here just for the last people that are still holding on. Is the UCM licensing model ever going to change? At this stage, there's no plans for it. We run the totally free licensing model. You buy the box. You have the ability to run all the functions out of it day one and fully load it day one. Oh, I've got one more question. Was there one more? Or have we covered everything? Any talks around licensing UCM OS? As in, will we run a licensing model? Is that the question? Or will it stay free? Is that what the question is? Not hardware, just software. No. Short answer to that is no. I guess we would have the ability to do it. However, what we also need to be very mindful of is the relationships that we have with other software or cloud-based PBXs and how that may potentially affect the relationships with them if we went down a purely software model. So that's more what the case is. It's not so much the limitations of the product, it's how would it affect relationships with other vendors and other platforms. All right, well, thank you for that, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.